All right, guys, this is Keegan Dimitrovic with Michael Landsberg. I call it Dimitrovic Diner, but I don't classify myself as an interviewer. But when I do get a chance to speak with people like Michael Landsberg, it's always a pleasure and it's a great honor for me. So, today we're going to talk about something that happened of 7, 8 years ago. I was in grade 8 at that time, so now I feel a little bit older because I'm going into my third year of university. So I remember this interview very vividly. It went about 15 minutes. It was a very concise interview, but there was a lot that was packed into that 15 minutes. So Michael Landsberg, for those who do not know, interviewed CM Punk in December of 2014. This was about 11 months after his WWE exit, and he had just signed a contract with the UFC. So before we start, Mike, I got to ask you, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. I feel good. I mean, I can answer that because you and I talk about mental health, obviously. If we didn't, then I wouldn't answer this way. It'd be really weird if you're just having a conversation with someone and someone says, "Hey, how you doing, Mike?" And I go, "Don't fucking call me Mike. My name is Michael." It's kind of
Yes.
the running gag in television was always "Don't call him Mike." I mean, the truth is, my parents never called me Mike, so it never sounded right. But
Okay.
if you said, "How you doing?" as you did, and if I went, "Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good," like depression's a thing that you carry all the time. It's like, no, you don't give that answer to people who are sort
Exactly.
of not on in the inner circle of mental health. But
Exactly.
since you asked it, I feel great today. Really, there's not a bit of acting that I have to do today. Whereas on a bad day, I would never back out of doing something like this, but I would be working my ass off to get up to a level of energy. I would say, even for me, a word would be believability in myself. I would have to work so hard to sound confident in that little bit of cockiness that I bring to it. But today, it's all natural.
That's awesome to hear. And I know too, a lot of times when people ask you what you're doing or how you're doing, it's a very rhetorical question, right? That a lot of people ask. And I ask too because I'm in the mental health space with you. So it's like the mental health community likes to stay together and legitimately cares about how one person's feeling and wants to be there for somebody. So I think with the mental health family, it's a lot different. But if we were in the public and someone said, hey, Michael, how you doing? Or hey, Mike, how you doing? You might react a bit differently than when someone in the mental health community
Oh,
does.
of course,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah, because that happens to me too. It's like, when I go to school or university and they ask me how I'm doing, I kind of take it differently. I take it more as like a greeting, just kind of like as an
Yeah.
olive branch to start a conversation. So, but when someone like you or someone like Mark Mero asks how I'm doing, I answer that a lot differently, and it's more of a natural approach because I can say, you know what, I'm hanging in there. I'm doing like trash today, but I'm still here and I'm still doing it. But today I'm actually doing half decent too. So we're both on the same page.
All
But
right, let's do something amazing.
absolutely. So I want to start with CM Punk because you wanted to do a full show on Punk, and I've done my research on the interview. I've watched it many times since grade 8, and I also saw that you did a show prior to when you talked about the aftermath of the CM Punk interview and what happened afterward. My question to you is, when you started interviewing him, he wasn't already in the UFC. He had signed a contract, but he was still about 2 years away from fighting because I believe his first fight was in 2016 and this was late 2014. So when you interviewed him, did you expect him to come in with a chip on his shoulder, or did you expect him to kind of be a little bit looser since he was not in that wrestling atmosphere anymore where he had to keep character and keep kayfabe, as they say?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I mean, this is so weird. The two things that I'm probably most famous for are CM Punk and Chael Sonnen.
Yeah.
Yet Chael Sonnen, after our kind of nightmarish beginning, I reached out to him and I said, "Look, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that this, and this, and I apologize for whatever part I played in the interview. And to be honest with you, it wasn't one of my best interviews." That's what I said to him. So we got to be friends. So I reached out to him and said, "Hey, CM Punk is going to be on the show. How should I handle it?" So here I'm getting advice from a guy who I pushed too hard too soon and it blew up. And he's telling me, you like CM Punk is a legendary talker, right? So he said, go after him, make it fun, make it confrontational. It'll be great. So I say thanks very much. So that's my plan. So I started thinking about it because he had left WWE,
Yeah.
but nobody wanted to really Well, there was nothing to talk about UFC, right? He hadn't fought UFC. So everything he had done that was public that I would talk to him about was all WWE, right? So I knew it was going to be largely a WWE era interview with a look ahead to, UFC. So that's kind of how I planned the interview. And knowing that he was such a good talker, I thought, okay, you know what? I'm going to go at him, not in what I thought was a rude way, but what good interview is. And good interviewers, ask questions that are not necessarily the easiest one to answer, and sometimes not the easiest ones to ask. Right. I mean, it's hard to sometimes look a guy in the eyes and ask him a question that is going to piss him off, or is going to make him really think.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And you did right at the beginning too, because like I said, we both have this satirical humor, right? Where we have that sense of humor where we like to be sarcastic, but it's in a genuine way at the same time. So it's like a paradox. Like we're genuine, but we like being sarcastic because it bursts the bubble, right? It kind of makes you feel a bit more comfortable and more kind of laid back in the interview. And you did that with him at the beginning. I remember you saying, "Hey, do you want me to call you Mr. Money in the Bank?" And that's funny because it's a double-edged sword due to the fact that he actually won the Money in the Bank contract twice in WWE, and then I'm sure he got paid well into the six figures, maybe even early sevens, to fight in the UFC. So, and then you made the great fight package for him where he's gonna fight the chef, Chef Boyardee, because he just turned vegan, and I thought that was brilliant. I thought that whole segment was awesome, but you could tell when he came back, when you guys went to the thing, he was not moving. He wasn't moving his lips, he wasn't moving his shoulders, he was just kind of like in a blank trance. And I think at that time, he was probably so detached from wrestling that I think he was there was a part of me that was thinking he was trying to keep gimmick. Still, he was still in that wrestling mentality in the show where he didn't really he wanted everything to be very serious and stuff like that. At least that's the way I saw it as an outsider looking in. But that package was awesome. And I'll give you an example too. I've been teasing that I'm going to be wrestling for the last few years. I've been saying it, but because of COVID, I couldn't start yet, but I start training in 2023. So if you were to make a package of me saying, "Hey, this might not ever happen," I would take it in a sarcastic way because I know you and you know me, right? So whereas I think at that time for him, because of where he was not laughing and
Yeah. So
yeah.
there's a lot that went to it. By the way, how did you watch the whole Punk interview?
Originally I saw it on
No,
TSN, and
like
then now it's
recently.
on YouTube.
Okay,
Someone had it on YouTube.
because I probably should have watched my own interview in advance because that's 8 years ago, and when you do a show every day, you tend to forget a lot about yesterday's show and this is sort of a lesson for anyone who performs anything. Every show you've ever done in your life doesn't mean anything because you can't change them. The most important show is the one that you have next. So you do an interview, you do a show, and then regardless of whether it was amazing or terrible, you try to learn from it, but then you move on. So you need more background though. So the CM Punk thing, he was in a studio and we were doing what you call a double ender, right? So I'm in our studio, he's in his studio. I think in this case, he couldn't see me, but I of course could see him because we were taking in his feed. And we talked for, I don't remember how many minutes, 5 minutes, 8 minutes beforehand. And, I said, "Look, do you know anything about me?" And he said, "Yeah, I've seen your interviews with so-and-so and so-and-so." And I said, "Good. My goal is to try to get the you away from the character you and learn something about you." So that's why these interviews for us have done really well. I mean, you're coming from a world where people typically didn't give interviews, WWE, where they were interviewing themselves, or they were interviewing, or they were being interviewed as themselves. So he said, "Okay, what, blah, blah, blah." So we start the show. And I loved that pack. I thought he was going to love it. When I said something like, and you could actually you could play it on this show and we could hear it, which would be awesome, I think. Now, I don't know if you can figure it out technically to get it up now and play it now, but it's something that I would love to go through with you because I thought it was really some good work that we did. And I thought he was going to laugh. And when we played the pack and then we came out of the pack, So I'm looking at him as you were, and I realized instantly, oh, he's pissed. He did not get the joke.
Yeah.
He did not. And like I thought to myself, how do you not get the joke? You're a vegan. And I said, you're fighting Chef Boyardee. Like, how is that insulting? In what way?
I'm gonna
So
try to find an excerpt of that video too to get it up one day. If we do another show one day, I'll have it up and ready and we could dissect that because it was freaking awesome.
and so I thought, okay, well, this is not trouble, because a confrontational interview can be great, right? I mean, I've told you before, the only bad interview is a boring interview.
Mhm.
So I'm thinking, okay, it's kind of on, and he's a great talker, and I guess I better be at my best. So I say, suck it up in my head, like don't back down from him because he's pissed off. So my question to him was, and I thought that this was not an insulting question. I said, I have to ask you, you've gone from WWE, where you were amazing, where you were a superstar, like a genuine superstar. And now you're going to UFC, which is a huge difference, where you fight for real. The storylines, are secondary, right? I mean, it's great in UFC to have a storyline where it's not created, but where you have two people from different worlds, they don't like each other, and it comes out. But you are going to be fighting for real. And I have to ask you, have you ever taken a real punch? He goes, what? I go, well, have you ever taken a real punch? Because he said, do you watch any of my matches? I said, yeah. And I'm not disrespecting wrestling at all. I think what you guys do is amazing, but it's not punches to the face. It's not guys putting you in an arm bar and they're going to break your arm unless you tap out. It's totally different. And then from there on, it went from bad in his mind to worse. And you know what he was super pissed off about? He was pissed off that he said, oh, you would have seen this. You're all my friend beforehand. And then we come on the air and you got this big act where you're really tough and you're asking these questions. And his tone was, that's okay. Yeah. Okay. That's what you want to do. That's okay. And it's like, God, how did this go so bad so fast? But unlike the Chael interview, which I thought was not, I didn't think I did a particularly good job when it turned into a brawling. I thought that what I did with CM Punk was perfectly in line with what an interviewer should do. And the fact that he was upset, I thought was a reflection of him acting like a baby.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. And I was happy that you brought that up because I was gonna ask, well, was his demeanor different when you guys were talking off camera before you guys aired the show? And you pretty much answered that question, and he was pretty cordial and was kind of
Yeah.
going on with everything. So, which brings me to my question. When you asked him if he had taken a real punch to the face, I could tell by the look on his face and the smirk that he gave, he was pissed off. Right. But I think there was a misinterpretation on his behalf because in wrestling, you still do get hit here and there, but it's not with malicious intent for the most part, unless if two guys are what they call shooting on each other, which is very rare nowadays. But in the UFC, it's with bad intent. You're going in there to win and you're going in there to knock somebody out so you get your hand raised. Whereas in professional wrestling, you're not trying to kill the guy. And I think he took that the wrong way, and then that's where it kind of spiraled. But the thing is too, like when you asked him the questions, he was giving you very short answers. Like he was giving you maybe a one sentence answer, if even. Was that hard to adjust to at that time?
No,
No.
you know what? It's like some chemical in your body reacts where, the fight or flight thing.
Yes.
So it's like, okay, this is a fight. So now, like, there's a part of me that turns into kind of a different person where, it's on, right? And if I'm too slow to react to that, then I'm going to look like a fool, right? And now he's trying to win, right? I mean, most interviews, you don't have a winner and a loser. The winner is the viewer if it's good, and the loser is me if it's bad, right? But he's trying to win because he's pissed off, and he's trying to make me ask a million questions, and he knows that's a technique that's can be pretty effective. And I'm going, hey, this is, even though I'm talking about your life, which is by far the most challenging thing that an interviewer can do when it's confrontational, is you're debating somebody on their life, right? So he and I are not talking about anything that I have done in my life or any experience I have had. I'm talking to him about his life. And that you're pretty vulnerable, right? Because you can look like a fool. You can say something wrong. And he wanted me to say something wrong. So it was like, okay, it's on. And I'm going to do my best to fight back, and I'm going to do my best to win this. And, his attitude was much more laid back. And I don't fool myself into thinking that this was really in any way significant in his life. Like, it was significant for me because, on the scale of celebrity, his celebrity dwarfed mine, right? I'm only known because I host a television show. Like, the crowd does not cheer when I come out. So I had a lot more to lose than he had to lose. And something like this is a lot more significant for me than it was for him, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. And you had mentioned too, I think in the other interview that you did about Punk, is he probably did 5 to 6 different interviews prior to you guys coming on. So he was doing like a whole interview loop throughout that entire day. So I think probably off the record was probably in the middle of that day.
It's probably true.
Yeah, so he probably too, and I've never met him. I've never interacted with him. I'm a huge fan of his work though, and I'm a fan of his in terms of what he can do in the ring. And I'm happy that he's back in the ring. He tried UFC. I guess it worked out to an extent because he probably made hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe even $1 million, and then he went back to pro wrestling, which he's doing right now. But at the time when he was being interviewed by you, he actually did, I don't know if you ever had the chance to listen to it, but he had done a podcast about a month earlier in November. So around Thanksgiving time in America, which is between October and November, I believe. And it was called The Art of Wrestling by Colt Cabana, who used to be his best friend. They've had a falling out since, but he had talked about his experiences in the WWE, and you had mentioned to him that it was a bad outlook for WWE because he had mentioned the staph infection that he had, which was MRSA, and he talked about all the injuries he worked with. I think he had a torn ACL, MCL, and PCL, I believe he said in the show. So he was working really hurt, and you mentioned that to him and said, have you thought of this as being a bad reflection of WWE? And he kind of gave you, he didn't even say yeah or anything. He was like, mm-hmm. Like, was that when you sense that from someone in an interview and they're so detached, was it difficult for you to kind of come up with something else on the fly to make it more engaged?
No, because now it's not really an interview the same way it is I'm trying to ask him questions that maybe he doesn't want to answer, right? So like I said, it's something clicks, at least for me, something clicks in my head that, this is no longer just a chat. This is a scrap. And what pissed me off too was he said, I'm not here to talk about WWE. Yeah. So I said to him, what are we going to talk about then? Right. You're a year away or whatever from even training for UFC. So like, why would you're CM Punk. You're not Phil. What's his last name? Phil. Sorry?
Phil Brooks.
Yeah. You're not Phil Brooks to people who are watching right now. You are, you're CM Punk. And he didn't like that. And then I asked him a question. I said, you are suing the WWE for medical malpractice, right? Mm-hmm. I said, but your wife still works at WWE. Is that hard for her, like to, be going to work and her husband is suing them? Your husband is suing them. And that pissed him off too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because he did give you a one-word answer for that from what I remember.
Yeah, but is there anything wrong with asking that question? If my wife worked at Bell Media and I was fired by Bell Media and someone was interviewing me, wouldn't it be legit to say, hey, how is it for your wife being at a company that fired her husband? But he didn't say it that way.
It's a legitimate question because it was big news at the time too, because his wife, AJ Lee, it was a very big name in WWE. She was probably the most popular women's wrestler of that decade, which was the 2010s decade. She actually revolutionized women's wrestling for WWE. So I'm sure for her, it was probably difficult because I want to say about 3 or 4 months after that interview, she retired. from WWE. Her last match was at WrestleMania 31, and she retired afterward. I don't know why she retired. I'm not going to speculate, but it was soon after that interview that she called it quits with pro wrestling. And I think at the time too, the doctor there for WWE sued Punk as well. I don't know if there was a double lawsuit or a countersuit or what it was, but I know that because he had mentioned how he misdiagnosed Punk's staph infection, and Punk brought that up on the podcast, and then he filed a lawsuit against Punk for defamation, and then I guess it got thrown out a couple years later. I think it was actually thrown out right before Punk's second fight in the UFC with if I forget the guy's name, something Jackson, Mike Jackson, I think it was, and it got thrown out. But I don't know what happened then. But yeah, I could tell because you asked him a question if AJ Lee will still work for WWE, and he's like, yeah, she does, you know. But then at the same time, I think it was either right before or right after, you switched the questions and asked him about hockey because he's a Blackhawks fan. I'm a Blackhawks fan too, but you asked him who's the greatest hockey player, and then he kind of got back on the same page for that. But then once you asked about wrestling again, you could tell he just was not in the mood for it. So was there anything in the aftermath? I know you mentioned he did call the UFC and he I guess complained about the interview, but was there any olive branch extended to kind of mend that fence?
No, no, I'm trying to remember exactly how it went down. But I messaged Chael after that to say, whoa, that didn't go great. He goes, no way. I'm sure it was great. And, you know, because his attitude about me, Chael, had changed. We were friends, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he wasn't just seeing the whole thing through CM Punk's eyes. He was seeing it through the eyes of his friend, right? And I don't remember, I think I did send Phil a note saying, hey, I don't know what happened there. I don't know why you were pissed off, but you know, I'm sorry if this was not what you expected and I didn't give you what you expected. I think I said that because I don't want to say I'm sorry for doing what I did, because I wasn't sorry. And you know, I'm not a believer in apologizing just to make things good. And you know, it wasn't like if he was mad at me and said, well, I'm never doing that again. It wasn't like I really cared at that point, because he was kind of disappearing and I don't think anyone thought he was going to be a factor in UFC. So I heard from UFC because they had set this up, right? This was their dance, so to speak. But I don't know if I told you the story about 2 weeks later.
I don't believe so.
Yeah, this is awesome. Oh my God, this is like the dream. So this was, and you said the date. It was December of 2014. What was the date?
I think it was the 18th from what I remember.
Okay.
I think that's the date it was posted. So it might have been right before Christmas.
So I was going on 2-week break. And one of the things I was doing on my break is my family and I were going to Vegas to go to UFC. And I don't remember what number it was. I think it was the one when Anderson Silva, you know, snapped his leg. Yeah. And I was in the second row for that. So we show up there because Dana was like super nice to us. And even though he kind of felt like I was a pain in the ass, I think he respected the fact that, you know, it was challenging, right? And he was really always super nice to me, and I really liked him. And whenever I would hear bad things about him, I would say, well, that doesn't mean they're not true, but my experience with him has been he's a good guy. So we show up for UFC. Just look it up as I'm talking. So it would have been around December 30th or January 1st or 2nd, either 2014 or 2015. And when you get it, just let me know what UFC that was. And essentially, we show up and someone takes us to our seats because, you know, we're sitting in the good seats. Oh my God, we're in the second row, which is so cool. Oh my God, like I was thinking as we're walking in, how much are these tickets? Second row for a UFC fight with whomever it was. But one of the things about being in the second row is there's other people that he wants to have in the second row. I mean, for me, it was just he was being kind, but he wants celebrities in the second row, which I was not one, to anyone in that crowd. So did you get it, by the way?
Yeah, I am trying to find the year. So, right, you said it was in late 2014, right?
Yes. Or
Okay.
early 2015.
Okay.
Like
So there was one on December 20th.
that was not it.
Okay, and then there was one January 3rd, UFC 182.
Yes,
Okay.
that's it. UFC 182. I actually remember the number because I mean it was a great card. So
Combo.
we show up and I'm there with my wife, my daughter, my son, and my son's girlfriend at the time, who is now his wife. And we're getting shown to our seats. And we move into our seats, and I look down the row, and who is there? CM Punk. Now, you have to understand this was like 3 weeks after this whole thing blew up.
Wound still fresh.
So yeah, so he's there with his wife, and I turned to my family and I say, you know what? I could just ignore it, right? Because I don't even know if he knows what I look like, right? Because I said, you know what? He didn't have a return feed of the interview. I saw him, but he didn't see me. So I don't know if he knows. Like he said, he'd watch wrestling interviews, but I don't know. So I'm thinking to myself, you know what? I gotta be. This is a time when you look at yourself in the mirror, if you had one, and you would say, Michael, don't be a suck. Go over to him and, see what happens, right? Like I knew he wasn't going to hit me, but I did tell my son. So I said to Corey, okay, you record this. And I said, Casey, you come with me because it seems less likely he's going to beat me up if I'm there with my daughter. So we walk over to him and I'm thinking, okay, just see what he's got. So I said, hey, dude, sorry. I don't know if you know who I am. I just wanted to come over and talk with you. He goes, I know who you are. And it's like, whoa, this isn't going to be good, or this is going to be really good.
Yeah.
So I say, I wanted to express, my thanks for doing the show, whatever. And, obviously it didn't work out really well. And I just wanted to come over here and basically see if you're still pissed off or something. And his wife is looking at me and she's very friendly. Right. So she's like, oh, this is, my husband's friend, Michael, with his daughter. And because she didn't know who I was, and I don't know if he had told her about it. I think he had, because when he said essentially, this is the guy from TSN that interviewed me, her face changed and she was like looking daggers at me. So I'm standing there and he's not saying anything. I'm doing all the work. And I'm talking to him about it, and he's saying, "No, that's cool. Like you thought, oh, I'm such a nice guy. I'm going to be so nice to him." And then, the show begins, and you totally changed. And hey, he had the same attitude. If that's the way you want to be, then that's the way you want to be. So I don't remember how it ended, but there was no, hey, bygones be bygones. He was pissed. Now his wife was pissed, and I think I probably said something flippant and perhaps sarcastic, and walked away back to my family, which was 6 seats over.
His wife too is a big advocate in the mental health community too, so it's kind of a juxtaposed position, because his wife has actually been very candid about her
Really?
her struggles with it too. I can't remember if it was bipolar disorder she said she had, but I had read her book a few years ago, and she had talked about her experience with it. So that's something too that is kind of juxtaposed with the whole situation, is because you have Sick Not Weak. She's also an advocate for mental health, and then you got Punk in the middle, of it also. It's kind of a unique situation, but at the same time too, like I've never met either of them, but I would like to work with him one day, just to kind of do the verbal barbs. It would be interesting. I don't know how much it would take out of me mentally to do it, but I think it would be interesting just to say, you know what, I can keep up with this guy, or I can, not put him in his place, or he can put me in my place, but we could have a program, whether it's based off reality or not, and it can make great TV, especially because I'm going to be wrestling. I don't know if you'll be wrestling if I ever get to that point, but it would be fun to do, just because there would be a lot of reality to it. Like, could you imagine like a fake off the record interview of me acting as him and making fun of him going into a match or something? Like, that would be freaking awesome TV.
That would be awesome.
It would be
so,
really.
One of the things that I made the point of saying all the time afterwards was that he's an amazing talker.
Amazing.
Super smart guy, super quick. he's great, right? So so it wasn't like, I'm bitter and he sucks. And the reason why I say he sucks is because I'm bitter. I mean, and that's also kind of, for me, one of the things that I would use if this was a court on trial. I would say, well, he's more than capable of handling me,
Yeah.
So he just chose not to. So if he was kind of a very quiet, if he was a trainer for an NHL team who never did interviews but had a special technique on how to treat pulled muscles, and I was interviewing him and he was very uneasy, I would have to go gently, right? Because it would be unfair. I'm in my comfort zone, and this guy, this trainer, is not. But CM Punk, really? I got to dummy it down for him? I got to be gentle with him? Come on, the guy is a great talker. I watched him on the Stanley Cup parade for the Chicago Blackhawks doing commentary, and it was brilliant.
He made fun of Hulk Hogan.
He was really, really good. So I think that with Chael, I would say it was not a good day for him, but a worse day for me. Meaning he acted like, not like everyone had said he would, but I didn't do a very good job of dealing with it. With Punk, I would say it was a bad day for him and a good day for me.
Exactly. And two, it brought eyes to the show, right? And you had mentioned that in previous interviews that, hey, even if it's controversial and the person that I'm interviewing doesn't like me or I don't like them or vice versa, if it creates controversy in the best of ways and it gets viewers, I did my job, right?
Yeah.
So also too, I wanted to touch on the end of the interview because he had said, "Oh, you're trying to be a nice guy and you're trying to be hot shit, by pretending to be my friend," which that's his point of view. I disagree with it, but that's the way he saw it at that time. But my question to you is, at the end, when you said happy holidays to him and, have a good holiday, he said at the end, shalom. Did that bother you, or did you just kind of let that go at that time?
We thought about it a lot. I had forgotten about that, actually, so it couldn't have bothered me that much. I mean, it was the kind of thing that so shalom is a Hebrew word for both hello and goodbye, which is kind of weird when you use the same word for both, but he used that, which was not in keeping with anything we had talked about. So it wasn't like, we had talked about religion or we had talked about Israel. So it came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, why did he do that? Was he trying to insult me? Was it anti-Semitic? And I've always been somebody who does not, lean in that direction where I believe, where my first reaction is, oh my God, I can't believe he said that. So I thought about it and we talked about it afterwards. And the conclusion we came was, who knows why he said it, and just to forget it, which we did and which I did since I had forgotten all about it.
Okay, I was just wondering because I'm a history major, so I've studied a lot of stuff with Judaism and World War II and stuff like that. So I read this book called, it was actually an autobiography. It was called Night by Elie Wiesel, who was
one of the first books as a kid I read.
Yeah, we read that in high school, and I did it again for a paper in university. And it's one of the best biographies I've ever read. And I had read that story. It was so heartbreaking, but such a triumph at the same time. And I thought about that when I was listening to the interview, and I went, was he saying that just to kind of get a last jab in, or was he saying that kind of like as a see you later? Because as we know, the word shalom does mean really hello and goodbye. So that's why I wanted to ask you if it struck a chord with you in a negative or positive way. But yeah.
It's something, like I said, that I had forgotten about, and kind of reflects my attitude, which is don't go searching for something like that. It's not like, what do you mean by that? Like, I'm sorry, what did you mean? You said shalom. Where does that come from? It's not like I gave you permission to talk about my religion and to tease me about it or whatever. I never thought of, kind of doing that, although it would have made for good television. There's no reason for me to think that he meant anything ill by it, but also there was no reason for me to think that he didn't. So I kind of just forgot.
I think it caught a lot of interviewers off guard too, who have watched that. It caught me off guard too at that time. But at the same time, do you think there's any opportunity for you two guys to ever be in the same position again and almost 10 years later go over what happened, like how you did with Chael, and you guys are good friends now. And Chael has a very similar personality to Punk in terms of being outspoken and kind of just being who he is. And do you think there's a chance that you guys could get together, whether it's virtually or at a show or wherever, and kind of not hash it out, but just go over it and kind of let it go for at least
I
on his
mean,
behalf?
from my standpoint, yeah. I mean, I'm sure this doesn't even resonate on his radar because it really doesn't resonate on my radar. It's not like, I mean, I don't do the job anymore. So it's not even like, I mean, if I was still doing off the record, I think it would be great to do an interview with him and see how it goes and get his take on it. That would be great television
Oh,
for
yeah.
sure.
It'd be
And I
great.
think it would be an interesting podcast too, or an interesting conversation. But it would be easier for me than it would be for him because I was never really mad at him, right? Like
Yeah.
he was pissed at me. And like I said to you before, those kinds of interviews are great for ratings and great for people being aware of the show. So I didn't feel wronged by him,
Okay.
but he felt wronged by me. And but I would do it for sure, and especially if his wife is talking about mental health. I mean, what a great partner that would be for some kind of initiative.
Yeah, of course. And his wife AJ is very well respected too in the wrestling community. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say anything bad about her. So I think she has a lot to offer too, because she does a lot of stuff outside of wrestling too. It's like she donates to charities and stuff, and she's a very good person from what I know. And as for Punk, I think he could be that kind of guy eventually you can mend a fence with under the right circumstances. And I think in recent years he has kind of, I don't want to say chilled out, but he has kind of calmed down a bit, especially since his AEW run. Even though there's buzz going around him right now, he has been a little more, I don't want to say happy-go-lucky, but a little more docile. But again, it's going to be the end of the interview now because we are less than 1 minute from the interview expiring, and we had 45 minutes. So, Mike, I want to thank you for your time and thank you for coming back on. And I'm looking forward to doing more in the future.
Yeah, and next time, grab the sound from the Punk interview, play it, and we can sort of dissect it.
Sure, we can do that. Your balls in your court. Time and place.
Great job, man.
Thank you, man. Have a great day.
Yeah, that was fun.